Have you ever wondered what the difference between a native speaker and a heritage speaker is? Maybe you've wondered if you yourself would qualify as a heritage speaker. Keep watching. This video is going to answer all your questions about heritage speakers. First, let's go over 3 important terms: native speaker, heritage speaker, and language learner. A native speaker's home language is the same as the language of the country that they live in and the language that they are educated in. For example, I'm a native speaker of English. I was born here in the United States. My parents spoke to me in English because that's the only language that they spoke, unfortunately, and I did most of my education in English. I now speak French and Spanish fluently, but I learned them at school as a world language learner. World languages used to be called foreign languages, but that term really conveys a lot of strangeness and alienness. Most people nowadays use the term world language. Also, things like Spanish can't really be considered a foreign language because people were speaking Spanish here in the United States before they were speaking English. And of course, they are speaking indigenous languages long before the English or Spanish arrived. World language learners can be considered world language learners at any time in their life. For example, you could have a 65-year-old learning Japanese as a world language for the first time. Or you could have a 5-year-old going to a Mandarin Chinese immersion program, and they would both be world language learners. Okay, so what is a heritage speaker then? Well, this is where it gets a little tough and we enter this kind of tricky gray area. Speak a language at home that is different than the language of the country they live in. For example, here in the United States, we have millions and millions of heritage learners of Spanish. Let me give you an example to put it into context. So let's say there's a guy named Juan. Juan's parents were born and raised in Mexico. They did most of their schooling there. They were native speakers of Spanish. But then when they were in their 20s, they moved to the United States and they had Juan. Juan speaks Spanish at home, but he goes to school in English. He watches most of his TV shows in English. He speaks mostly English with his friends, and sometimes he doesn't want to speak Spanish. He would be considered a heritage speaker. Now let's say Juan gets married to another person who is a heritage speaker. They both speak Spanish and they both speak English. But at home, they kind of prefer to speak in English. They speak about 20% of the time in Spanish. They have a daughter named Yasmin. Yasmin would also be considered a heritage language learner because she does speak some Spanish at home. There are heritage speakers of all different languages all around the world, usually in places that have large immigrant populations. For example, in Germany, there are large populations of heritage speakers of Turkish, or in Switzerland, heritage speakers of Portuguese, or in Israel, heritage speakers of Russian. We jump into even more of a gray area when we have multilingual countries like Canada, or countries like Singapore, where there are multiple national or official languages, but the schooling is done in another language. See that gray area I'm talking about? You may be wondering if there's a certain amount of time you have to speak a language at home to be considered a heritage speaker. And the answer is not officially. I would say you're going to have to at least understand a good chunk of the language. So that would be maybe at least 5 to 10% of the time spoken in that language. I hope this video helped you understand the difference between a heritage speaker and a native speaker. Are you a heritage speaker? If so, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what your situation is like.